All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to this Grade 9 coffee. I'm Clive Watkins. I'm the Director of Advancement here at the American School of Paris, and I'm going to introduce you to everybody in just a second, but let me just go through a couple of housekeeping notes. We've set aside an hour today for this coffee morning. We may go under that, but we promise not to go over that. We're cognizant of people's times, and we find that if we go over by any amount, people don't know how long we'll go on and tend to drop off. So we want to make sure everybody gets the full content today. So we will finish this by 10:30 this morning. We did take questions ahead of time, so we do have some questions from people. But you can use the Q&A function. So if you look at the bottom of your screen there, you'll see the Q&A function. Anytime you have a question, you can throw it in there. If there are other questions on there, go ahead and read those. And if you like those questions, there's an upvote, and you can just give it a thumbs up, and that will move it up in the order of things. And then I'll be moderating those questions. So as we do the presentation this morning, if I see a chance to throw it in, I will, but also we'll save time at the end to make sure we get to people's questions. And also, just to let everyone know, we're recording this session. We know that this is not always the best time of day for everybody, so we want to record it and put it out there. One other thing on the Q&A, those aren't anonymous. People will be able to see your names. So let me go ahead and introduce you to Aracelis Maldonado. She's our upper school director. We're also joined by Sandy Karam, who is our upper school counselor for grades 9 and 11. And Emily Russo is our school counselor for grades 10 and 12. Go ahead, Aracelis.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our parent coffee. We hope that you get what you need in order to navigate high school, upper school successfully. We have your questions. Thank you so much for sending them in advance, and we'll try to answer them at the end of our presentation. I'm really happy to be here today with our two counselors. They have a wealth of experience working in the upper school and specifically at the American School of Paris. So they'll be able to share that expertise with you today.
Hello, everybody. Sandy Karam here. I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a few minutes. I just want to introduce the other person who just joined us under the name of Aracelis Maldonado, but it's actually Alyssa Pierce, the academic dean and AP IB coordinator.
Hi, thank you. I'm not sure Araceli sent me the link, so I'm worried to change the name. I don't want to mess hers up. So yes, my name is Alyssa Pierce. I'm the academic dean, and I'm happy to be here with you. I work with the counselors and with Ms. Maldonado very closely. Thanks.
So thank you for being with us. Just to let you know that we ran this presentation last Friday with in-house in person. So it was a little bit more interactive, which is a little bit more my style, but we felt, it was important also to try and reach out audiences that cannot come to campus. I understand we are not in the center of Paris. I've heard that before many times. So here we are, and we're here to talk about your teenager transitioning into high school and perhaps even navigating teenager and high school. So I'm sure you're aware it's a new chapter in your child's life and education. They're sort of asking for more independence and more responsibility, and yet they might not quite be there yet maturity-wise. They're expressing it in very, very strong words. So they still need all of us adults, and especially a lot of parental support and involvement. And, our goal as a school, of course, is their academic success, their personal growth, and preparation for the future. So who are we? I'm Sandy Karam. So this year I'm the 9th and 11th grade counselor. Next year I'll be the 10th and 12th grade counselor. So we keep the same students. I've been here for quite some time. I've had different roles in the school. I feel like I had different roles because of my different lives. Before kids, I was able to coach swimming, do other things. Now I'm the 9th and 11th grade counselor, but also the IB CAS coordinator. And my lovely colleague is Emily Russo, and she does the 10th and 12th grade.
I
Emily?
do. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. So I have been here at ASP for a few years as the counselor. And so last year I had ninth graders. I've been in education over 20 years as an IB Lit teacher and as a school counselor. And every single one of those 22 years, I have worked with ninth graders. Even this year, I have an LL Leadership Lab 9 class. I'm also the Leadership Lab coordinator. So I know the world of ninth grade. I know it's interesting territory to, and you don't have to walk it alone. So Sandy and I are here to support you along this very interesting and important and exciting year. Obviously, the transition into the upper school is a big one. And we hope by the end of our presentation today, we've calmed some of your nerves as well.
And the definition, you know, a lot of people ask us, what do counselors really do? I like this definition. It's from the ASCA model. Counselors are professional educators with a mental health perspective who are understanding and trying to and responding to the challenges that, you know, your children are expressing in school. So, you know, whereas our base is really education, we have that mental health perspective, that paradigm. And how do, I mean, what do we focus on? We focus, of course, on the social and emotional well-being. A happy child is a child that can learn better, right? We provide, especially ninth grade, a lot of academic support and planning. And throughout the years, in an age-appropriate manner, we do some sort of pre-university counseling. And how do we do this? So Emily and I sat down. We're you know, Alyssa, Emily, and I, with, of course, Aracelis and the team, we work very, very closely together. And we try to sit down and sort of think about what are the many ways, how can we put it in one slide, the many ways in which we support the families and the students. And so we collaborate a lot with teachers and staff, learning support, of course, included, and administrators on general matters in a general manner, or with individual students and looking at individual student needs. We do a lot of one-to-one meetings. You know, I'm trying to get through all of my ninth graders. There are about 85 of them. There are about 85 11th graders. So that's about 100. My math is good. It's about 170 students that we're sort of, or each of us are overseeing. We provide, you know, intervention if there is a crisis that's happened. So we have sort of a crisis response mode and we intervene. We invite guest speakers for like motivational sort of interventions. We are part of the child safeguarding team, and that's a team of people who, if there is a serious issue, we get together and we put in place a plan or a process to support that child and that family. And very importantly, through Leadership Lab 9 and 10. So in ninth grade, students are part of a Leadership Lab / PE program that goes hand in hand. And there's a specific curriculum that Emily is the coordinator of and implements, right? Diffuses and implements. And she'll talk a little bit about what's happening in LL9.
Perfect. So, you know, there's a reason for the things that you're seeing when you see your ninth grader, you know, able to have a perfectly, you know, normal conversation with you and then have sort of an emotional outburst within 30 minutes. Or if you're seeing that their kind of life is in a state of disarray or disorganization one day and other days it's not, it has to do with brain development. So I always go back to brain. And right now at this point, ninth graders, their brains are currently in a state of restructuring. They are developing, and these essential executive functioning skills that as adults we have, we use, we implement, are actually skills that we had to build really quickly starting in adolescence. So really, when we take a look at the ninth grade brain, it's in development. And in LL9, one of our first units is a ninth grade transition unit. We recognize that students have many years before their brain is fully developed to kind of have and house all of these executive functioning skills. So we start off the year with community building. We have many new students to our school this year and every year, and it's a really important part for them to feel part of this community. So LL is a really great place for them to make some of those personal connections, as well as have a trusted adult where they can ask some of those questions that they might be apprehensive to ask in other places. Sandy has visited all of the LL9 classrooms, and that continues throughout this year. So many of these skills are kind of woven into the year of grade 9. We are teaching time management strategies, so really thinking about the number of hours in a day and what is realistic when students want to do athletics and theater and clubs, which are so important to development and socialization for an adolescent. And yet, how do they also balance the considerable rigor shift that happens coming into 9th grade? We're very aware of that shift. And so we promote time management strategies, organization, what happens when we fall behind. So implementing templates for students to be organized, such as planners, digital planners, checklists, being able to kind of prioritize tasks. We know that sometimes motivation could be a challenge. So task initiation using the Pomodoro technique, prioritizing skills. Our unit is starting to transition into communication. So different ways to listen and respond with empathy. We hope you appreciate that at home as well. We have done some work with academic integrity, coming into the upper school. Academic integrity and students' use of AI is something we're very aware of, and we want to be proactive about, so that way they have the best scholarly experience. And then, of course, setting goals for short-term goals as well as long-term goals. So right now we are doing all of that and have been from the beginning of the year, just to continue to support this transition.
And just to add to what Emily just said about the transition from 8th to 9th, about a third of our class is new, coming from other schools than ASP. And so we're very aware that students have very different educational backgrounds. They have different organizational skills. Some schools did provide, a lot of homework, others did not, and so on and so forth. So we're really, through LL and through our team effort, are trying to bring them to a certain baseline level that is ASP 9th grade, and the tools that they're going to need to be successful moving forward. Okay, I absolutely love this quote. Perhaps the only thing more difficult than being a teenager is parenting one. So I assume that's where you're at right now. And the reason why it feels so difficult, as many of my families tell me, is like, at one point they wonder, they're like, I don't know my child anymore. In this moment, I cannot recognize my child, whether it's an emotional outburst, whether they're pushing a little too hard, what they're saying and doing. And as Emily pointed out, this is really the time where there's such amazing development physically, socially, emotionally, and cognitively. Before I go forward, Em, do you want to take over with the?
Sure. So when we met in person last week, we did this activity, and we've just kind of altered it a bit for our webinar, but we want to give you an opportunity just to share in the Q&A right now, to type one challenge that your 9th grader is either facing. We know it's been, we're into the school year at now. A lot has kind of surfaced at this point. So take maybe 1 minute and write down, type out in the Q&A one challenge your child is facing or might face as a new 9th grader. So I'll give you a minute to do that, and then we'll just kind of share out some of those as they come in.
I love that quote about the only thing more difficult than being a teenager is parenting one. I think I needed that a few years ago.
You didn't go to the right school.
I know. What can I say? Didn't have you guys. while we're waiting for if anybody has anything they'd like to type into the question about issues that our kids are facing, there are some that came in on the pre-submitted questions, so we can take a look at those.
And I looked at them, and it was very on par with what we were in the Friday sort of ninth grade coffee was shared. Also, it was very organizational, time management. It was the question about the shift from 8th to 9th, whether we're aware of it or whether we are, what are we doing? How are we doing it? So I'm hoping a lot of these questions are answered via this presentation, this webinar. But if they aren't, definitely at the end Q&A, we can revisit them.
Sure.
Perfect.
Let's go. We got a bunch of them coming in here. So why don't we can go ahead and start with Julie's, because that one came in first. So Julie's saying the amount of work and tests, and also not always the grades in line with the amount of time put in, and bringing some disappointment to the student as they're doing that. So I don't think Julie's saying that they're not getting the grade they deserve. It's just that they put in a lot of effort into it, and it doesn't result in the grade that they had hoped for, given the amount of time they put in.
Right. And through LL9 and through our conversations, we talk a lot about understanding what the teacher, teacher expectations, what is expected of you in that test or via that work, right? And that is a communication piece between the child and the teacher. So as ninth graders, and they're developing these skills, but part of it is advocating and trying to get the information necessary, right? It's not just about studying anymore, but it's also about getting the information. So there it really is going to the teacher and sort of sitting down. So making an appointment with a teacher, sitting down with the teacher, going over whatever work it is we're talking about, and sort of deconstructing that so that the teacher kind of says, well, one of our teachers uses this analogy really well. Says, you've just sketched something, which is great. I need color. I need details. I need you to tell me, put in the eyes and the mouth of this person. Like, this is a sketch, if it's an English essay, for example. Now give me more details. So that type of thing is invaluable for a child in moving forward.
Yeah, just to also add to what Sandy just said. If your child is spending an hour or two in any given task, especially in grade 9, that should be a red flag for you. So my suggestion is that the student goes to the teacher, like Sandy said, and directly ask, what do you think is the amount of time I should be able to spend I should be spending completing this task to be successful? Most of the time, the teacher would actually say, you're spending too long on this and you should stop, especially for math. So persevering, sometimes we teach students to persevere when something gets tough. This may be the wrong message if your child is just sitting there struggling with something and not really turning any results. So communicating with the teacher about the time expectations for each one of the assignments definitely works. But also understanding that at the beginning, of course, it's going to take you longer because these tasks are all new to them. Right. And I talked to the parent coffee that we had face to face. I talked to parents about how difficult it is for me as a new person in Paris to actually get what I need at the supermarket, which was a very proficient task for me before I got here. But things are new places. I'm very frustrated. I only buy 2 things out of the 10. I haven't been able to find anchovies for the past 2 months. I just found them yesterday. It was a very successful day for me. So of course, it's going to be some frustration at the beginning, and that will even out, especially after the October break. But communication is key with the teacher.
Alyssa, you look like you were going to jump on with something.
Just to generally as a guideline, it's about 30 to 45 minutes of homework per class. So if your child has 3 academic classes, let's say, in one day, then they should be spending about 30 to 45 minutes on average for homework. And as everyone's saying, if it's more than that, they need to communicate with the teacher, but it's probably more along the lines of they don't know how to work efficiently and how to study efficiently. And that's something the teacher can help with.
And the two next questions also have to do with that, which is basically, Karen asked, challenge to balance increased academic expectations, homework with busy club life, and Maria, balancing time, activities, homework, sleep, and fun. And it's exactly what Alyssa said. And I wish I'd taken, there's a whiteboard right behind me, and I wish I'd taken a picture of it with my last 9th grade meeting, because it's not just about, are you writing down your assignments or are you taking Schoology? It's also now about plotting your week and seeing what is achievable, when do you have enough time to do it, you know, estimating how much time you have on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you have an orthodontist appointment, a club, a sports, what are you doing on the weekends, shifting a little bit of work, you know, looking at it week by week, because this week you will not have your Wednesday and Thursday free. Therefore, you need to shift the work more towards a Sunday, but that might not be the case next week. So all these organizational skills that have to do with executive function, we are actively teaching, and we'll go back to it in the presentation.
Can I also just interject something there? This increased academic expectations. Again, my sons did not go to the American School of Paris. They went to the International School of Prague, and they went all the way from middle school up through upper school. And I guess a question I have is, or do we do a good job going from our middle school to the upper school in preparing those kids for what is, it's true, the increased academic expectations, that by the time they get to grade 9, they are ready to manage their time effectively?
Yeah, I think that the great thing about the American School of Paris is that we have a large number of new students joining us in every year, some of them in grade 9. So we have students coming from all diverse backgrounds, and so their experience and preparation for grade 9 varies. When it comes to our own middle school, I think the bigger challenges that parents have shared with us is the change in the grades, in the grade book, right? Because middle school doesn't use the same system of grades that we do use. However, our teachers know that. Our teachers that teach grade 9, they're fully aware that that's different for the students that are coming from our middle school, and are spending time making sure that the students understand this new grading system. This does require a lot of patience, because that understanding of the grading system and of the expectations will not happen overnight in the first quarter of the school year. So communication with teachers from parents and students usually helps, and waiting to see what the second semester brings. Specifically when it comes to clubs, which is another thing that may be different from the middle school, very active club and sports life in the upper school, more than I would think other schools that students come from as well. And it's important to remind parents, we offer all of these opportunities so students have a variety of things to choose from. They don't have to choose at all. So if this quarter was rough in making decisions about time management, think about after October break, what are some things that you want to stick with, that you're getting the most out of, that don't necessarily have to fill up every afternoon.
I just wanted to jump in on Clive's question. The good news is that we do have some teachers that are crossover teachers between our middle school and our upper school, right? Specifically in math, in social studies. I know that our English teacher, our 9th grade English teacher, is working with the 8th grade English teacher. So there is a lot of talk between the divisions, and we work very closely with our middle school colleagues to know what's going on in middle school and 8th grade, and then to make sure that those students are prepared for 9th grade.
And from our end, from the counseling point of view, you know, as part of the 8th to 9th transition, we meet with, you know, the lovely Anthony, Susie Valley, and Elisa, and we sit down and we go through every student that is coming to our upper school to get to know them on a more personal level. So
Cool.
okay, so what is happening with our kids? So I mentioned social development, and the students or the children are trying to understand who they are and who they are trying to be, right? Identity is key. They're developing their identity. You're seeing that the peer group is becoming stronger. The influence of the peer group is becoming stronger and stronger, right? There's a risk of perhaps engaging in riskier behaviors. What they're doing is exploring boundaries in relationships and behavior. Like they're pushing all adults, but especially I think parents, trying to become more and more independent, but also they're looking for their limits. So it's important also to set certain limits. And I'm gonna use this as a mantra, and perhaps in difficult times, you're gonna go back to it. When all else fails, depersonalize, 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 right? Just keep it as a mantra. There's the emotional development that's happening. So you have this sort of, Emily alluded to it, this sort of roller coaster ride of like these emotional outbursts. And it's real biology happening there, right? The hormones are kicking it in. There's all sorts of chemistry happening. The brain is in full development. They're trying again to understand who they are, but there's so many changes. It can be very scary to them, hence the emotional outbursts, right? There's a lot of uncertainty there. And there is the cognitive development, right? These are their reasoning skills, their cognitive skills, their critical thinking, writing skills are all developing. They are digital natives. I think this is something that we all as adults have to come to terms with. I work in education, so I see it. I see my husband, who's a lot more removed from education, having a harder time with the digital aspect. It doesn't mean we need to give them carte blanche with everything that has to do with technology. It is a very useful tool. It can be used in different ways, but it's still a tool and it shouldn't control our lives. And limits are extremely important because kids need those limits, especially ninth graders. So you have all of this cognitive development, but they don't quite have the maturity yet to sort of implement their own sort of, to self-regulate, right? To implement their limits. And so with that, we have kids entering high school. And whereas I think, high school can be frustrating to parents, especially at the beginning of ninth grade, we're actually contributing to that development. We're pushing them to develop a little bit more, right? By providing certain academic expectations, right? We're pushing them to develop their critical thinking. We're, of course, down the line getting them to prepare for university, but we're also in incremental steps, sort of asking them to produce more, to perform a little bit more, to hand in homework on a regular basis, to be held accountable if they don't hand in a homework regularly, right? Assessments, same thing. You have one assessment, you cannot retake it. All of these things, all of these limitations, our boundaries are contributing to that development. We're asking them to explore different things, right? We're proposing, we have a very, very rich program. We have the electives that, we've got arts, music, theater, film, technology. We've got Spanish as a second language. We're asking them to explore, especially as 9th and 10th graders, because that's how they grow and develop. And knowing what you don't like to do is just as important as knowing what you want to do. I always use this example, the number of students, especially unfortunately girls, who at the beginning of the 9th grade year will tell me, I do not want to do that computer class, that digital technology class, please don't put me in it. And I'm like, listen, A, you have to do it for graduation requirements, but B, you really never know where it's going to go. And then at the end of the semester are like, wow, I thought computer science was really just math, but it's not. It's conceptual, it's problem solving, it's great. I might want to do AP computer science as one of my, sort of honors classes in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So it's important to push them and try different things. Again, all of that is pushing the executive functioning skills. We're trying to help them develop good study habits, right? And through LL, through our conversations, through your support, they have to balance it right now. So we help them create a study schedule. I always talk to them about, well, where in your space, in your house, can you find a space that is distraction free? Oh, you can't do that. Well, maybe hand in your phone to your parents, right? Take regular breaks, use active learning techniques, summarize things to your parents, for example. See if you really understood the lesson. There are different tools that we expose them to, like a planner or a digital calendar, flashcards, mind mapping software tools. All of these things are there to help them develop good study habits. The key is they need to be actively taught and reinforce those skills. And they also have to understand that they have to try different things. It's not a one size fits all. I like Google Calendar. My daughters prefer putting things on a board in their room. That works too, right? So they have to sort of try different techniques and see what works for them. There are also, of course, the social and emotional changes, right? We talked about the influence of peer groups. So we encourage them to join clubs and sports teams because that's where the social group, the friendships, they have time to develop those, right? We want them to transition in, and social emotional well-being is extremely important, especially at ASP, but in general, right? For our students, our children. So through these clubs and through sports, that's how they can sort of role play, maintain those connections, develop those new connections. A little bit more of what is available at ASP. We have a lot of programs, free programs that will help you and help your child develop all of what we've been talking about, right? The number one thing we have is the after school support homework, or it's called Minds in Bloom, right? Minds in Bloom, it meets on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 3:45 to 4:45. It's our learning support specialists that are there. When I talk to my 9th grade students and I'm like, well, why don't you go there? And they're like, oh, I can just go and ask for help. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. They're waiting for you right there. And we also have the Math and Science Club, right, on Tuesday from 3:45 to 5, which are, we have our math and science teachers there that rotate. We encourage them to collaborate with classmates. You know, often I tell them, why don't you start a study group after school? There, I can find you a classroom. You can sit and you can sort of brainstorm for a presentation or perhaps study for a test. Definitely seek out help with a teacher. Email your teacher, set up an appointment, 10:20, lunchtime, to get some extra support. We've got the one-to-one NHS peer tutoring. They can get tutoring older, you know, upper grade levels, tutoring perhaps their own grade level or younger. And of course, we as guidance counselors are here to help with organizational, social, emotional support, or to find very sort of tailor-made personalized solutions. But with all of that, they need to reach out, and you need to let us know if something is amiss with your child, and we'll find solutions.
And I'll just add on to that, because I think one of the amazing things about ASP, you know, the International School Counselor Association and the American School Counselor Association says that the ratio between counselors and students is about 200 students to 1 counselor. Here at ASP, we are about 100 students per counselor, which means that we are devoted, you know, to 9th graders and then 100 11th graders. We are perfectly in line with that model to be able to provide high quality support. So please, we love working with our parents as partners. We recognize that students are very much, they come home, they maybe don't want to talk about their day as much. They, you know, say they don't have homework or that everything is fine. But the truth is they need you. You know, they're trying to assert their own identity. And in doing that, it does require some risk taking, some academic risk taking, but they need you very much. You are a crucial person in their lives. So absolutely encouraging them to reach out to us as counselors. Sandy and I do our best always to be reaching out, making those connections, being really available. And so we're here, but please know that we are resources for you as well when you need to help bridge that gap. Because we recognize that students are often looking, you know, for answers elsewhere instead of maybe, you know, they used to go to their parents all the time with issues. Now they're going to friends or social media, and we want to redirect them to ensure that they're getting high quality support that's here and available to you.
And on the lines of that support, you know, we are aware that students that this sort of jump from 8th to 9th can be there's some anxiety, but a lot of pressure, some stress. I do want to qualify, you know, anxiety and stress are words that we throw around a lot. some level of stress is not bad. It does push you to try and up your game. You know, my girls are competitive equestrian girls, and so right before a competition, there's that sort of like that sort of heart rate, that you know, gearing up to an event. And I often tell my girls, hey, this is good because this is your body getting ready to perform, right? You're asking for a performance. Of course, the more extreme type, the one where they cannot function anymore, they're breaking down, they're burning out, that is a very different type of stress. And that is definitely when we need to intervene and do something radically different. And that's on a one-to-one sort of conversation. But in general, you know, whatever we're sort of generally seeing in the 9th grade, we definitely deal with it in our offices. We you know, use things like I'll use like deep breathing exercises to help them sort of cope through certain events. It was Novak Djokovic who sort of was asked the question, what do you do before a tennis game? What is the number one thing that you do to prepare? And he sort of said, you know, there's one thing that human beings do that they're not aware of, and it's always shocking how unaware they are of their breathing, right? And how their breathing can control their emotional state and affect. And just getting them to do that is a very empowering tool. The other things, you know, and this is we have perhaps less control of, but I find that, you know, our students do quite a bit of physical activity. It isn't a population that isn't active, but they do. I think it's sleep and nutrition that I'd like to put on your radar. Sleep is important. In the 9th grade coffee on Friday, I think a parent asked, well, what is kind of like, what do you think is the norm? And for a 9th grade student. And I said, well, you know, some students will need 8 hours of sleep. Some might cope with 6 or 10 or whatever it is, but it is not unreasonable to have a 10:30 max 11 o'clock bedtime. If I were to give a sort of like ballpoint figure, that's what I would go with. And nutrition, I mean, there are many studies that are coming out on the effects of the type of nutrition, especially the amount of sugar and the sort of behavior, attention, focus, and all that. So if there's something to watch, you know, and of course you can't control it all, but even in having conversations with your child about how important it is to eat well and balance, maybe have an 80%, 20% rule, or whatever it is, you know, 8%, 80% pretty healthy, 20% okay, McDonald's is fine, is important to have. I threw in this slide just because, you know, we are a high school, and yes, we are preparing, as we said at the beginning, our students for the future. There is 99.9% of our students do go to university. The things that universities look for, you know, GPA, trends and grades, improvement, are you challenging yourself? The co-curriculars, you know, they try and ask the question, what are you bringing to our table, to the university's table? Who are you really? So we're in the 9th grade, we try not to stress them out too much by putting that on their radar, but we do start in age appropriate ways in Leadership Lab, for example, 2nd semester, through different activities to introduce that language and to sort of help them to start thinking about things in an age appropriate way. In 10th grade, we do it again. If there's something that I'd like to put on your radar that could be extremely helpful, is the experiential learning piece, right? So if your kids can be part of a summer program, whether it's volunteer, whether it's a course, camp, whatever it is invaluable, especially for our digitally native community or of 9th graders, where it feels like they have access to a lot of experiences, and it feels like they are seeing and know a lot, but nothing beats the actual experience. And so that's perhaps something to think about the summer of 9th, the summer of 10th, and that will help them develop those executive functioning skills, those motivation, maturity, and perhaps kind of guide them as to what they enjoy doing or perhaps not doing for later on for universities. Do you want to
Sure. So in our in-person coffee, we broke into groups and looked at a few scenarios together to try to figure out how do we help our student, give them the skills and the support to think independently and come to their own conclusions while also making sure we are not necessarily doing it for them. We know sometimes it's just easier to write the email. Sometimes it's easier to say, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. And sometimes it does need to happen. However, there are opportunities where in ninth grade, your student might be coming home. Maybe they have forgotten an assignment. They're struggling with time management and organization. They want to stay home from a school event because they just maybe don't want to go and socialize. They might be feeling overwhelmed with workload. We recognize that these scenarios are all things that have happened and are happening. Maybe they're spending too much time on devices or playing video games, right? This is a big concern for a lot of parents. Many parents ask us, what is the time limit there? So when we took a look at some of these scenarios, we tried to find ways where, okay, how can you encourage positive behavior? How can you promote good thinking skills where you can help your ninth grader kind of weigh the risks and the consequences with the rewards? And then making sure that students are kind of have those boundaries set as well as far as expectations. So, we recognize that there's lots of scenarios and we're encouraging parents to still ensure your involvement within these. And however, making sure you're giving your child space to find their own way as well. This is the time where they develop those skills to, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and send an email to my teacher because I have a question. Maybe I'm going to still CC my counselor and my parent because I want them involved in the conversation. Okay. How can they be proactive with thinking about all that they have to do in their day and making some hard decisions about, okay, what is a reasonable amount of time for me to be on that video console, for instance? Maybe 3 hours isn't going to cut it anymore. Okay, maybe we recognize that those things are important because they are outlets for students. Sometimes they can be a social experience, but again, helping them really sort of guide those conversations so they are coming to their own conclusions is a hard challenge and it's time consuming, but it is one that we take on as counselors when students come in. And so we encourage that as well. If there are scenarios on this list that you'd like to talk about further, we'll finish our presentation here a bit and we can go back to any of these or any others that you're facing if you feel like you need some guidance in the Q&A at the end of this presentation.
Emily, can I jump in then if people are thinking about putting something in the Q&A? And I'll just give you a scenario. It was always an issue that I had with my older son is the amount of time that he was spending on devices. I mean, specifically a computer. Now, people my age in school didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. And the older the kids get and they have a laptop there, it's easy for them to say, I'm doing my homework. I'm doing my homework. How do we know? How do you know as a parent that they really need to be on that device and they're not just being sucked down the rabbit hole of some YouTube or Instagram feed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll put a little plug in for our future parent coffee. It will be specifically on digital safety to really, because we understand this is a huge topic and one that parents are grappling with every day, and students are as well. We know that devices are addictive, and we'll share a little bit more about that. But there are certainly some things that we can do. Yes, we are in a digital age. Students use their devices for research, for homework, for social media, for gaming, for all sorts of things. Again, I'm going to bring it back to setting those limits. Yes, homework has to happen. We established that as ninth graders, students have about 30 minutes per class per night. So really, when it comes to homework, there should be about 2 hours, give or take, depending on kind of if they have an elective that day or if they're core classes. So really setting that time limit. I like to encourage parents to set up a study space that maybe, you know, if you're concerned with that, that maybe isn't always in the bedroom. Maybe it is in, you know, a study table in the kitchen, right? Where parents can be there kind of overseeing what is actually happening during that time. If students are spending hours and hours on their devices, it would be a good opportunity to just kind of monitor that more. You know, when it comes to phones, same thing. Those phones, I say, they need to be out of the bedroom by a certain time. There's all sorts of limits and time limits parents can set on those devices as well. And just so you know, families, you know, if your student comes home and says, oh, you're the only one who sets those limits, you are not. Many parents are recognize how essential those tech boundaries are. You're not going to be their best friend in this conversation. I guarantee you that, okay? However, it will be something that will help set their guideline. They'll have better sleep. They'll be able to kind of unplug their mind from reaching from that device when they wake up in the middle of the night or whatever that is. So again, it is a big topic. I saw, Araceli, I saw you had a hand up. I'm not too sure if you had something to add to that.
No, I was going to say something similar, but to remember too that parents are the owners of the devices. You bought them for them. You own this device. And so I do encourage you to advocate for what you think is best in terms of boundaries and to do a lot of research about what things should be turned off and turned on in the devices that you're giving your students. And if having an open conversation as a family about how far you want to block some things or allow some things in your household, and model whatever you want to see in the students, make sure that you model it yourself. If you don't want devices to be used at the dinner table, you should be able to put them away yourself. So as a family, adopt rules that apply for everybody, and that will remove the equity or unfairness argument that you'll hear from your kids.
And just
And one of the things you said, Emily, that that is what we ended up doing. We received this advice that our kids were only allowed to use their laptops, no phones in the room, no laptops in the room. They were only allowed to use their laptops at the dining room table with the screen facing out so we could see it. And it seems a little drastic. You would like to be able to trust people, but the truth of the matter is the number of psychologists that Google and others hire to drag people into it, they need help in order to stop them from doing stuff like that. So glad to hear that you're advocating for that too.
And just to add to that, there is self-awareness in your children when they're in my office, because often they'll report something like, I got into a fight with mom and she took away my devices or something like that. I said, oh, okay. Were you spending some, I mean, you know, I'm a parent. I don't just take things away randomly, right? I mean, there must be a reason. And they're like, well, I gamed it. Oh, well, how much did you know, oh, 3 hours. Oh, you spent 3 hours gaming okay. So how do you feel about what the parents are asking, you know, which is basically putting in these limits? And is that reasonable? Like, are they doing it because they hate you, or do they want you to succeed? Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And you know, 9.9 times out of 10, there'll be a smile kind of going, yeah, no, I know. I need to get better at, you know, and so they're that's executive functioning, developing these conversations, right? You feel like you're, you know, repeating yourself over and over again, but many adults are saying the same thing in different ways. And that's how we're going to get the student or the child there.
I just want to say we've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay. So that's basically my final slide. How parents can support the child. So just to sum up, I mean, we talked a lot about communication, the importance of being, you know, present and involved, to stay connected with teachers and counselors. Emily, you know, focused on that. To use our online portals, PowerSchool, Schoology, track homework and grades. I just a little disclaimer there, you know, PowerSchool can be like the stock market, right? The moment a grade comes in, it just drops or goes up and then it changes. So I'm not a big fan of notifications. I've turned on notifications for my children. I would rather schedule. I don't want our relationship with my child to be just about academia and grades, whether good or bad, by the way. So what, you know, if you want a best practice model, is basically to sort of speak to your child about this and say, hey, I'm not going to be looking actively, but we are going to schedule this time when we both sit down and open PowerSchool and look at what's happening, and you can walk me through and educate me as to, you know, how you got that A plus, you know, whatever, what's happening with that C, and so on and so forth. And that way the relationship isn't just about, so I got this notification, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Oh, but mom, I handed it in and they haven't graded it yet, and they gave me an extension for X, Y, and Z. So it saves all of that sort of roller coaster of emotions, and frankly, it protects the relationship. So that could be a way of approaching and tracking and helping support your child. Of course, making appointments with teachers and counselors. We have a newsletter, Clive, right? Every Wednesday that has a wealth of information. Please do, you receive it. Please do read it. Of course, open communication with your children, trying to sort of find the right balance between support and independence, right? Remember, they're pushing, they want to be independent. That's great. We want them for them. They just need the tools, the right tools in place before we can give them that independence. I often talk about this analogy with my kids in my office. I sort of say, hey, what's your credit line with your parents, right? What it's like a bank account. What's your credit line there? And they're like, well, my credit line's not very high. And I said, well, if you want that independence, you have to build that credit line, right? Banks will not lend you money if you don't have a credit line in there. So we talk about that. You know, Araceli's talked about boundaries, being a parent, not a pal, and modeling that behavior. You know, you want your kid to read, start reading. You want your kid to put away the devices, put away the devices yourself. I understand that work will sometimes pull us into devices, even when in the evenings. I would recommend, you know, this is what I asked my husband to do, is to not be on his phone to answer emails. If he has something to do, he has to do it on a computer in a specific area of the rooms that signals to kids, I am now working, right? I am not having fun. I am now working in that area, that space, and that is why I am on my device. So it has to be very clear for them. We talked about monitoring sleep, diet, and exercise, and especially when all else fails, this too shall pass. They will all get there. Don't worry about it. You've got enough support. Depersonalize, depersonalize, depersonalize.
Well, for me, I'm looking. You had, oh, sorry, you've got a closing activity. You wanted to do something?
Well, our hope is that provided a lot of information today, and we'll follow up with a recording as well as a handout that has some information about our contacts, as well as kind of Minds in Bloom and math and science help if you're interested in those resources, but also to just reflect a little bit on, you know, what you're already doing so much. You know, and you're doing great, parents. We absolutely recognize that the support you provide is paramount to your students being the wonderful individuals that they are here in our school, and they are. We enjoy them immensely. And just thinking about from our conversation today, you know, have you heard an academic support strategy that you think is something that's within your control to put in place to support your ninth grader? An emotional support strategy, knowing that prefrontal cortex that's responsible for decision making is getting in fights with the amygdala that's based on the seat of emotions. So what sort of emotional supports did you hear in this presentation that could help guide the rest of this year? A way to foster independence through thinking of some of those scenarios. And again, to support those healthy social interactions, which we know is so important in ninth grade and something we want to make sure students have the bandwidth to continue to enjoy. So we'll send you that handout this afternoon or sometime this week, so that way you can just kind of look all of that over and do some final reflection.
I was sort of taking notes as I went through, thinking I'm going to summarize by saying, here are my takeaways, but I've ended up with an entire sheet of things that it would take me 10 minutes to read. This is such great stuff that you're sharing with everybody. I think one of the big ones that you guys kept going on about is the need to communicate. I mean, there's communication between the parents and the student, but also the student and the teacher. That idea, a lot of those pre-submitted questions were about what I'll say work-life balance and the amount of time they're spending on homework. And you guys are saying if they're spending more than 30 minutes on a subject a night on the homework and not getting the grades, the results that they want, they need to have a conversation with the teacher and go over what those expectations are, where might they be falling short, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's, it's one of the big takeaways, so that you have that time to do the other things that you want to do. And then Araceli said at some point is that we're coming up to this holiday right now, time to reassess and say, is everything that I'm doing, all these club activities, is this really what I want to do? Maybe time to decide, change things or drop things too. I don't know if you guys, Aracelis, is there anything else you'd like to summarize?
No, I just want to leave you with that this is just the beginning of the conversation, that if you want to continue to talk to us, please reach out. We'll always make time for parents and for students. And I'm sure other questions will come up later after we're done today. So do not hesitate to email us or meet us here on campus. We would love to talk to you.
All right. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for your time. Thank you to those who joined us. I know we had a small crowd today, but that's fine because we know that what time of day it is, but we have recorded this and we're going to make it available to everybody. And there was also a talk about a digital safety session.
Yeah, we'll share that. Yeah, I'll email all the parents about that right after the holiday with the date and the time. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, you guys. And thanks to everyone who joined us. See you later. Bye.
Bye.